Oh, I didn't even clip my mic.
Yes! We're back. Episode 25 coming at you of the Music Guy Podcast, a podcast about two musicians working in the Toronto, Ontario area. My name is Al Rowe. I'm a music guy. I play guitar, I sing, I write songs, I make records, and I make this podcast. My partner in crime, co-host, coming at you all the way from Markham, Ontario, is Mr. Michael Hebbs.
Holding down the fort, make sure nobody gets our toilet paper.
I'm over
got
in
30 rolls, man. Because of that mishap, our miscommunication, we got 30 rolls. Shouldn't be sharing this online.
That's right. Yeah, we just by happenstance bought way too much toilet paper because I was at Costco and I was like, "Hey, Mike, do we need toilet paper?"
Yeah.
And didn't hear back from you and forgot that I had bought it only 2 weeks previous and picked up 30 more rolls from Costco. And those are thick rolls too. You know,
It's good quality.
if you're careful to go through those a couple squares at a time, you get a lot. You get a lot of use out of one roll goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important stuff. How's Toronto treat?
Well, I'm over here in Liberty Village at my girlfriend's place. I was kind of
overrated.
hanging out over here for a couple days when this whole social distancing thing came to be a thing. And I just sort of said, well, I guess I should just stay here because now you and I haven't really been in the same place.
Yes.
Since
Well, so the thing is, I'm trying to isolate for 2 weeks so I can go see my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because you and me, as of right now, have zilch going on.
Yeah.
Big fat nothing. I'm teaching some Skype lessons. I taught 5 or 6 today.
Mm-hmm.
But literally, like, every one of my students, except for like maybe an 8th, are just like, yeah, we don't want to do that. I think that's going to turn around though. I think in 2 months we're going to be stock full of Skype students.
I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's not looking like that's going to be the case for
Right
me, but I'm very grateful for the students I do have and the work I do have. So we're also coming live on YouTube. So for folks that are watching there, welcome and thanks for joining us. So we're doing this podcast for the second week now in our separate locations, as we had sort of said, and I think it's working out reasonably well. It's a little bit more challenging than obviously being in the same room, which is ideal, but
more planning required. Yeah,
a little bit more planning, a little bit more technical stuff. So we do apologize if there's any weirdness in that way on the live stream, but it's we're doing what we can and staying at home and staying away from other people, as should everybody right now. So
yes,
weekly reminder: stay home, don't be a bozo. And with that,
great use of bozo.
What's
really
that?
Form there.
Yeah,
great use of bozo.
Great use of bozo. Thank you. Yeah. So with that out of the way, we wanted to bring you an episode a little bit, I don't know, off topic, if you will, from what's going on right now in the world, and just sort of talk about some of our favorite podcasts and some of our favorite YouTube channels, ones that maybe even influenced us to start this podcast of our own.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. Got definitely some ideas from some different fellas. It's actually mostly dudes. That's kind of sexist.
Well, you know what they say about the music industry.
Yeah, not good things. Let's just say that. But I feel like it's slowly changing.
The gender imbalance in the music industry?
Yeah, I think, I mean, with the advent of social media and all that stuff, and just people being held accountable for being idiots, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
It's becoming a
that
bit
has
more of a
nothing to do with
welcoming
what
place.
we're talking about. I just felt like getting political.
Yeah. Hey, this is your show, man. You can do.
Yeah. I'm gonna go on a 30-minute rant.
Lord knows I've gotten political on this show, so
Yes, you have.
yeah. So, anyways, we just want to hit you guys up with some podcasts and YouTube channels that we've really enjoyed. If you're finding yourself with a little bit of extra time on your hands as of late, maybe you want to give these a
Unless
listen.
you're in an essential service,
Yeah.
then you're finding yourself with no extra time. One of my students works at Home Depot. They're giving them a $2 an hour pay raise to possibly be exposed to the COVID-19.
Okay.
Yeah, he's working more because most people have quit.
Really?
Yeah, guy is doing like overtime. It's not very thrilled.
No. Why are people quitting? Just because they're afraid of exposure, I guess.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
Huh.
they don't for $2 an hour of a bump. But the unfortunate thing is, it looks like for the funding, like EI, definitely for EI, if you quit your job, you don't get it.
I see.
Whereas the CERB thing that's coming up, the Canadian sort of assistance,
Mm-hmm.
from what I was reading, if you quit your job, same deal, you don't get it.
Well,
I get fired.
Yeah, you gotta get fired, I guess. Well, we'll see how all that stuff unfolds. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't. I don't envy the position that some of these essential service workers are in, especially grocery store folks working at grocery stores and the like. But boy, do we appreciate it, because without these folks, we wouldn't be able to get food on the table. So we do appreciate what they're doing out there, and they deserve to be paid handsomely for it and treated like royalty, and I hope that they are being. Anyways, let's jump into some. I don't know. Let's maybe alternate. Let's start with a podcast, and then maybe jump to a YouTube, and vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, something a little bit more lighthearted.
Yeah.
You know, people are stressing out a bunch, but I mean, for us, for you and me, as long as we stay safe, this ain't that bad a time. Other than just losing all the gigs, you know, that sucks. But I've just been practicing a bunch.
Sure, yeah, and it's an opportunity to take that time and use it to learn and improve your craft and
watch tiger documentaries.
Watch the Tiger King and watch the new season of Ozark. Oh, baby.
Is it good? It's a good one?
I'm finishing season 2.
I kind of checked out when you saw Jason Bateman's bum just going. You know what I mean? That was a bit much for me.
You couldn't handle that?
I think he's a funny guy, but yeah.
I think it's an excellent show. We're just getting caught up on season 2, and we're going to be starting season 3 real soon, because all you can do is binge watch Netflix right now. So, anyways, use this time to expand your craft and maybe learn a little bit. And I know that these podcasts and YouTube channels we're going to recommend have really sort of, at least for me, really taught me a lot in terms of record producing. I owe a ton of that to just watching stuff on YouTube, learning how to use Pro Tools, learning different tricks, techniques, learning how to work with clients, listening to podcasts about the same sort of stuff. I went to Humber College for vocals, but I never went to school for recording arts or anything like that. And I've been able to build a small sort of client base in business in producing music with the help of the guys in the Agenda, and a lot of those skills that I'm using now, just I learned for free on YouTube and by listening to podcasts.
Not that you're inexperienced, but the level at which you can do your job based on how long you've been doing it is pretty darn high. You know what I mean?
I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, I think like we're in an interesting age where if you decide you want to apply yourself to something, the information is out there.
Yes.
Like if you
That's what I was saying to a bunch of my kids I'm teaching. I'm like, man, like they love video games and they love like the little nitty gritty stuff and like technical stuff. I'm like, get the Unreal Engine. You know, it's free. Make a game with it. You got 3 or 4 months. School's back in September, man.
Yeah. Well,
Learn
they're
some
going to be
cool
doing stuff online, but yeah, though.
Really?
Oh yeah, they're
did
switching
not.
to online. Yeah, I mean, like if you wanted to, I don't know, like start working on cars, or like if you
Yep,
wanted to
yep.
build a log cabin in your backyard, or if you wanted to learn a programming language, and like all this stuff is all available online. And it's just an amazing time to be alive. So, anyways, without further ado, let's let's get into a podcast here. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start with the podcast that probably is almost single-handedly responsible for us starting this podcast. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that CD Baby DIY Musicians Podcast. no, that's enough. I've never even heard that podcast, but Alf speaks very highly of it. What's
It's a great
the name
show.
of the podcast that actually spawned this?
The podcast that I'm talking about is the UBK Happy Fun Time Hour podcast.
Yes.
Hosted
I
by
concur.
hosted by Gregory Scott, aka UBK, who's a mixing engineer and designer of gear, analog gear, and plugins.
Such a
as
cool
well.
angle to be
Yeah,
like on a podcast, you know?
yeah.
How many analog hardware gear designers do you get to like hear their like perspective?
Yeah, I pretty much won at the
Yeah,
moment for
yeah,
me,
yeah.
anyways. Unless there's another podcast out there, excuse me, that's doing that. And yeah, for those who don't know, Gregory Scott runs Cush Audio, and they make. I think their most famous piece of gear is the UBK1, which is a compressor. But they also make the Clariphonic,
Yeah, they talk about the Clariphonic
which
a lot.
is I think a fairly popular piece as well. And
I have the UBK one, not the hardware. I wish.
you have
I
the plugin.
Plugin.
Nice.
It's awesome. It's so cool.
Oh, sweet.
If I were to make gear, that would be just what it does is what I would want to do.
Yeah. So therefore,
It's
you
very
don't
cool.
have to make gear.
That's exactly it. I'm also not going to learn all that stuff. I did actually look into the basics. There are some courses on how to make plugins. I was like,
Oh, really?
maybe I can do this. Yeah, it's a lot of coding.
Yeah.
But if you're coding inclined, I mean, if you think that being doing all this other stuff that we're doing is going to lead to good things, make some plugins and can really get people buying them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jeez. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, or
Getting
even
off track.
even like there's been a couple times where I've wanted just to have like a macro to use for a certain operation that I do a lot of in Pro Tools,
Yep.
or something like that. Even like on a less complex way. If you could learn how to program a macro or just like a very basic application that did some service for you in
Yeah.
Pro Tools, it doesn't have to be like an actual super complex analog modeling plugin, but that would be sweet to be able to do.
That would be cool.
Um,
I mean, back on the UBK thing though.
Yeah.
Like they have really good advice, obviously for hardware, but like just perspectives to get into like the advanced stuff.
mhm.
Like it doesn't seem like it's like super advanced to get into, but I feel like if you never recorded, listening to it would be interesting, but it wouldn't be as useful as like, okay, I need to know how a compressor works.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real nice balance. Greg's co-host is a gentleman named Nathan Daniel, who I actually
Originally named Nathan Schreier.
That's right. I actually spoke with briefly over email about. I consulted with him to do a mix training session, which is a service that he offers. And so, anyways, it's just great dynamic between the two of them. Great balance between the hardcore technical stuff that Greg knows by being a designer of gear and plugins and all that stuff, and so they can get real scientific and technical when they need to and want to, but also just a lot of what they would call like glove slapping, where it's just like you don't need to worry about all this technical crap. Like just go make your music,
Yes.
get motivated, that kind of
their
stuff.
answer isn't always like learn more stuff and read more numbers.
And it's almost never buy more gear.
Yes.
Even though they love
yeah.
talking about gear, the advice is almost never, yeah, you need to buy gear. It's like, no, you need to develop your craft more. You need to work harder. You need to get back into the studio and do your thing. So, and then
it's a cool one to listen to, though.
Yeah,
it's a cool one to listen to, especially if you're super experienced. I feel like a lot of their stuff, you'd be like, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or like that's a cool thing to try.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you weren't experienced, you'd listen to it and be like, that seems really mysterious and like neat. Like, it seems like magic when they talk about it. You know?
Yeah.
And they have a great sense of humor. It can be a bit raunchy at times, not for me, but I feel like if I showed it to some people, they'd be like, that was rude.
Yeah, they definitely go off the rails every now and again, but they're very funny, and I definitely laugh out loud. And you're in it.
She's in it.
Katie just walked by. Where was I? So, great balance of just the technical stuff, and I've learned a lot about just their approaches to working with clients and making clients feel comfortable. And they also just give straight up good life advice. Like, people will write in with questions about family problems, relationship problems, work problems that aren't even really related to music, or it'll start off as a question related to, oh, well, I can't get motivated to write songs because A, B, and C, and then the guys sort of read into it and they're like, well, I think you've actually got a huge problem here because you're living with this person and it's not working out and blah, blah, blah. And they get really deep into it.
Cry
sometimes.
for help, right?
That's right.
It's like a question at first, and then they're like, I believe this is a cry for help.
Yeah. Lots of great inside jokes. Lots of great insight. So I think it's got a good balance for, like you said, for folks who aren't experienced or even like necessarily interested in the nitty-gritty of recording, but also is on the level of people who are super experienced and are looking for that really in-depth information. So couldn't recommend it highly enough.
If you were listening to it like on the bus or on your way to work, it's super valuable information.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I listen to podcasts while I work out. Is that weird? Do you do that?
No, I should do that. For some reason, I don't listen to podcasts other than in the car.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm in the car a lot.
Yeah. I mean,
not anymore.
Exactly. I haven't been listening to podcasts lately. I haven't been driving enough. But when I start going on runs, hopefully it's going to get warm soon, I'll be listening to some podcasts while exercising. Let's jump to a YouTube. You want to hit this one?
A YouTube? Yeah. Let me just... So I think the one that we can the most relate to, there's two, but the one that I think we both feel the strongest about is Produce Like a Pro.
Yeah.
Produce Like a Pro is some pretty legit source. What's the name of the guy?
Warren Hewart.
Warren Hewart.
Yeah.
Right?
In his Liverpool accent.
We would have been in sync if we were in the same room.
That's
right there.
Yeah.
But, the internet.
Yeah.
But he's got tons of cool little almost like sub sections of his YouTube thing. Like, he's not just one type of thing,
That's right.
So like he'll have things where he talks about a piece of gear. He'll have things where he talks about a specific skill, like how to record a drum set. He'll have things where he invites someone in and does an interview. One thing that we didn't do about UBK, though, is we didn't recommend an episode.
Oh, shoot. You're so right.
Yes.
We were supposed to do that.
This is the most important thing.
Yeah.
You know what I find annoying, and I'm really sensitive about this? When I have a thing that I want to show to someone, I have to really think, like, what episode am I going to show them so that I don't screw it up and then they don't give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode that we had said for UBK was I Want to Smell It. Episode 8. the sense of humor is right in there.
Yeah, right.
But the one thing that you had said that really stuck out is they really talked about home studio acoustic treatment in the budget sense, and they knocked it out of the park. And it's like almost them saying, like, don't buy this, buy that, and you will get like tenfold returns.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really worth listening to. Episode 8, I Want to Smell It. Anyways, sorry, got distracted. I had to keep us on point.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a great episode, and it's it's just amazing how off people's priorities are compared to, I mean, and these guys aren't the be all and end all and all that, but just listening to some guys with some real experience and people writing in being like, well, I need to buy better headphones. I need to buy better speakers. I need to buy better cables. That'll make my stuff sound better, right? Better cables or better plugins. And they're like, well, what does your room sound like? You know? Yeah. And like, instead of spending that $200 on my plugin, why don't you, pick up some basic stuff from Home Hardware or Home Depot and like change the sound of your room completely? It's going to make a way bigger difference than...
Well, it also, too, you get someone who has, with guitar, they're like, oh man, I got to get a better guitar. And it's like, maybe it's not the guitar, maybe it's your amp, or maybe it's you want a certain sound and you need to get it from a pedal. You know what I mean?
Or maybe it's like your hands and you just need to get better at your instrument,
never.
Right?
Never the player.
So episode 8, definitely start there. It's a pretty easy podcast to binge, to be honest. If you got some long drives, I got through it real quick. So, so as you were saying, produce like a pro with Warren Hewart.
It's really good because he has, like you were saying, I don't know if you were saying this, but I learned a lot about recording and mixing on this. He has videos demonstrating things, and now I still come back to it for the other videos. And we had written out some videos that we really thought were good. Why don't you talk about this? Because I only have one type of sort of series that he does that I really listen to these days.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of something for everybody in this channel. I really enjoyed the in-depth sort of setups of how to mic a drum set, how to record a guitar amp, how to record a vocalist, and his in-depth mixing stuff as well, which was super. So he's got different series. One of the highlights for me was the Sunset Sound drum setup, where he was doing a session at Sunset Sound, and which is studio in Los Angeles, I believe. I'm gonna sound real dumb if I'm wrong about that. And they just show you all the microphones they're using on the drum set, where they're placing them, why they're doing what they're doing. But he's also got videos about miking drum sets in a bedroom or in like a house, where you don't have that luxury. And he'll say, this is a really expensive mic, but you could use this one instead, and it's cheaper. It's like $100 and it does a similar job. And so it really has a mind towards the budget conscious person, and understands that the industry isn't what it used to be when he acquired all the amazing gear that he has and the studios he's working at have, and like, how can you do it on a budget now? So all that kind of stuff is great. He's got a mixing tutorial for each element of a mix: how to mix drums, how to mix bass, etc., etc.
One thing that I would say about this channel, a lot of the stuff I think leans towards people that are looking to learn specific like stuff. Like, I wouldn't just go here for entertainment if I was like an artist and I didn't care about recording.
Correct. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Whereas UBK, I think someone who doesn't like recording could sit through 2 or 3 episodes and just be like, that's interesting,
and enjoy it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's very entertaining. Not that he isn't entertaining. He's a very lovely dude.
Yeah. Warren, you mean?
Positive.
Yeah. There's also he does a lot of live stream stuff, so you can watch him mix in real time. He's held contests where you get to download raw tracks, mix them yourself, send it back, win a prize, kind of thing. You can get access to samples for free. There's
really
also a paid tier where you can get even more goodies and stuff like that. But man, the stuff that's available for free on YouTube, it's I don't know how he produces this much content.
Yep.
Like, it's like a lifetime worth of videos up there already, and there's just so much to glean from it. And on top of that, there's interviews with like heavy duty engineers, mixers. There's a CLA interview that we'll link in the show notes. Andrew Sheps, all sorts of heavy guys like that. So
I mean, those are cool. But the one that I gravitate to the most is the next one, Inside the Recording. Where he has he usually, I think it's an engineer, right? It's usually the engineer of the
Yeah,
song.
I think he sits down with maybe the tracking or recording engineer from the session, or maybe the producer. I really don't
like
know.
big songs.
Big songs. Yeah, one was
Yeah.
Everlong, right?
Yes,
Did they do
and
Everlong?
that was
Foo
so
Fighters?
cool.
Yeah.
And they have the isolated tracks, so
Yeah.
you'll hear just the guitar, and then the engineer will be like, "Yeah, that was this guitar."
Yeah, they're
I
sitting down
mean,
in the
this
studio, and he's just saying, "Yeah, well, this is what we did." Yeah.
Yep. And they'll tell like little anecdotal story. That was not a word.
Anecdotal.
Anecdotal. There we go. Anecdotal
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
about like their personalities and stuff like that. Yeah, they had Everlong. They had Don't Fear the Reaper, which I listening to that, like the recording of that song, the quality.
Oh, it's
I
excellent.
gotta go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
I took it for granted when I was like 18. I'm like, yeah, SNL, sure, cool.
Yeah.
And then what was the other one? Black Hole Sun.
Oh man,
Soundgarden.
that made me like that song.
Yeah.
Honestly,
yeah.
didn't care for it at all until I watched that video, and then I was like, "Wow, this song is incredibly good." And
It made me want to get
missed
a
it.
Gretsch Duo Jet.
Is that what I need to do?
I think that's what you got to do. Sorry, I interrupted you.
That was it. So I think those are all good places to start with Produce Like a Pro.
Yeah.
Great channel, wealth of information for free on YouTube. So check it out if you're a home studio musician or home studio producer. It's a perfect channel for you. And if you're interested in all that sort of stuff, or if you're just a music fan, just diving into that inside the recording stuff is super fascinating as well. Let's jump to another podcast we love. How about a non-music podcast? How about the Joe Rogan podcast?
It's classic.
You a Joe Rogan fan?
I love Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
I like as soon as you said that you wanted to have a podcast, I'm like, if it can be at all similar to the Joe Rogan podcast, it'd be so fun to do.
Yeah. The thing that blows my mind about Joe Rogan is that guy does his homework. Like,
yes.
When guests come in, like, he knows everything.
Do you think he does his homework? Do you think he just really, really likes that? Like, he'll have on like someone. He's like, I've read this dude's books. I want to have him on. And obviously, he has the.
Well, sure. I mean, I think there's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, he knows his stuff, and
yes.
And the way that he's able to retain all of that information. And then also sort of come across as just like, I'm just here. I'm just hanging out. I'm just makes the guests feel super comfortable, while also at the same time sort of really knowing his stuff. It always blows my mind about him. They'll be talking about something super complex and he'll chime in with, well, what about this giant word? And then you're just like, holy smokes, man.
Yeah. I also really like that he's willing to be like wrong, because a lot of people give him troubles or give him shit for like, he's recorded 1,000 podcasts.
Yeah.
So it was years and years and years ago when he started, and they'll take quotes from his old podcasts. When he started his podcast, he would just have anyone on, someone crazy, like just because it's like, this will be fucked. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And they'll take stuff from that, and he's like, yeah, that was wrong. I shouldn't have said that, He's like willing to grow, and his opinions have evolved.
I mean, over the course of 1,000 episode, you're bound to mess up a few times, right?
Yeah.
The other beautiful thing about his show, I mean, for one thing, the MMA stuff, for me, doesn't interest me at all.
No.
And he categorizes things, so if you do want to listen to that, because obviously Joe Rogan is a huge figure in the MMA mixed martial arts scene. So if you are super into that, the shows are all categorized and labeled properly, so you can just see what you want to check out. But the other cool thing I'll do every now and again, if I'm bored, I'll just open up his podcast feed and just type in the name of a celebrity or an actor or somebody I find interesting, and just be like, this person's probably been on this show. I'll just type their name in and see, and like 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh yeah, cool. There's an Elon Musk show. Of course there is. Sweet.
He got into trouble for that podcast.
Did he?
Elon
I don't know.
He smoked a little bit of pot, even though it was legal.
Yeah.
And they were like, you can't be doing that.
One of the
investors or whatnot.
One of the great ones recently was an interview with a gentleman named Michael Osterholm. which is it's a show all about infectious disease, sort of right around the time that the whole COVID thing was coming into the minds of us folks in the Western world, where it had already obviously done a lot of harm in the Eastern world. And this gentleman explains things super well, and it's a really, really intriguing, interesting show. And they talk about a few other infectious diseases and other sort of topics that are super interesting.
He's so curious too. Like Joe Rogan is just so naturally, you can tell he just wants to know. He has like interesting things. He's like, well, what about this and what about that? And gets interesting like discussions, sort of almost like he gets on new little tangents that they're like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. It's just he's really good at what he does.
People want to talk to him. They want to open up to him. Yes. And I mean, I listened to the Bernie Saunders episode, I think.
Yep.
Where he was just saying I think it was Bernie, but it could have been somebody else, just stressing how important they thought Joe's program was, because it's actually getting out to the people who want to hear it, and the information is not being filtered or distorted or censored in any way.
There's no agenda, I guess.
And I mean, there's always an agenda. Like Joe's got an agenda,
but it's less of an agenda than a 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody like Bernie was able to open up and go a little bit further and go a little bit past the just sort of bullet point script that a politician needs to stick to. And so it's a platform for people to really open up and be understood a little bit better than a headline or a quick sort of blurb on the internet about them that everybody sort of assumes is true or whatever. Another really wacky one, I shouldn't use the word wacky, but another sort of wild one to check out is the Alex Jones episode. There's two of them.
Waggy.
And just he's an amazing character in his own right, and just the stuff that they talk about, man, he's a conspiracy theorist. He probably would hate being called that, but it's really interesting stuff, man. And even if you're listening and being like, this can't be real, parts of it though, parts of every story is just like, okay, I'm
he knows
buying
some
it.
interesting fact, and I mean, which are true, which are not true. It's
he's got a photographic memory, like it's insane.
I did not know that.
He can remember the name and the lettering of different like bills that were passed in the U.S. and when they were passed.
Yeah, no, it's a funny one. The Alex Jones thing, he got into trouble for that one as well. And like, I don't have a particular knowledge of Alex Jones, but because of another podcast that we will mention later, I kind of know a bit more about Alex Jones, and I know why he got into trouble. I don't know necessarily if it's warranted though. It has to do with like platforming and stuff like that. You don't want to give someone a platform who's like a bad person. But who gets to judge who's a bad person? He just had him on because they're literally friends.
Yeah,
they're friends for.
Well,
they're not like let's have drinks, but they know each other and they're friendly with each other.
They went into pretty great detail about a bunch of controversial stuff. So if you're interested, it's definitely worth a listen. It's just awesome stuff. So those are a few episodes to get folks started on that one. And yeah, there's something for everybody. Like, it's a complete variety podcast.
His health episodes, like the Dr. Rhonda Patrick one, tons of really interesting, like sciencey, but not too sciencey for like a layman like me. And just cool health stuff, like talking about like how much, what's the best like omega-3 supplement, and then she'll go through which ones are the best for what types of people. How much vitamin D should you take? It turns out it varies person to person, and she talks about the genetics behind it. And like, oh, if you're a white dude, you'll need, I think you need less vitamin D, just stuff like that. Like, it's very interesting.
And I mean, another great thing about Joe is, now that you mention all that stuff, is he does an excellent job of making sure that what the guest is saying can be understood by guys like us who don't get it. And he'll be like, hold on, can you repeat that? Can you slow down? Or what does that mean? Or what is this? Or like he makes sure that the listener gets it. So, you feel like you're in on the conversation and you actually understand what's going on and you've got a stake in the subject matter.
Yeah.
All right, let's let's jump to a YouTube.
To the YouTube. You go ahead on one of these, buddy.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Recording Revolution YouTube channel. Gentleman's name is Graham Cochran, I think is his
Graham
last
Cochran's
name.
right,
Yeah. And this was one of the early YouTube channels I picked up on that was doing tutorials on Pro Tools and mixing and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
Very well spoken, very well produced videos. If I'm being honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the sounds that he arrives at on some of the records.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I mean, that's all season to taste. And honestly, like I've learned a ton of tricks. One standout one for me was an episode on vocal writing, and we've talked a good amount about vocal writing in Pro Tools, which just means sort of making certain syllables and certain words louder or softer to sort of to get the vocal to sit evenly inside the track.
Yeah, this one is definitely another one of those ones where it's like, if you're just like an artist and you don't want to learn about recording, this is not.
Yeah, this is definitely more on the technical side. He does the odd post. Actually, a really powerful one he did that changed my outlook on things was, I don't remember the name of it, but we'll find it, put it in the show notes. But it was one about entitlement, and it was why you shouldn't use cracked plugins. And I watched this, I don't know, probably like 8 years ago or something. I had a bunch of like software that I didn't pay for or whatever, and I watched that video, and afterwards I was like, man, yeah, like I need to grow up and I need to like take this more seriously. So I uninstalled anything I had that wasn't legit and just decided like
I just always worried about viruses and like almost inconsistency, stuff crashing all the time.
Well, I mean, it was right around the time that I was like, I'm gonna start taking this, I'm starting to get a client base, like I might actually be able to start charging money. I was like, if I'm charging money for my services, I can't be using cracked software. So anyways, that was a great one, and that definitely helped me to make a change for the better. He's got a series called How to Mix a Song from Scratch, where he goes through his whole mixing process, sort of similar to the approach that we took with the 10-step mix video series.
But yours is not like contrasting as an opposing advice.
Yeah.
Yours isn't directly inspired by it. Yours is inspired by all the stuff you've learned.
Oh yeah, it's a different perspective, but there's overlap though. There's overlap.
Oh, for sure.
And I was definitely thinking about that video series when I thought I should make one with all the stuff that I've learned in a sort of a similar fashion. So that's a great one to check out. Again, all this stuff is free. I'm not sure if they have a paid tier over there, but I'm sure you can support their channel if you want to. But really, really great stuff. And it's
I
all
think
free.
all these guys have a paid tier.
Yeah.
I think that's the plan.
Well, I mean,
produce great content.
If you make great content, people want to support it. You got to make a way for them to do that, right? So, Recording Revolution, lots of very, very budget conscious, probably more so than any of the other ones we're going to talk about. He did a series of how to record a song with a single SM58 mic.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
He recorded a drum set with one 58. He recorded every element of the mix. He put a 58 on. That was it. So, if you want to look at, if you're really budget conscious and you're looking for like what's the most cost-effective way to do things, there's a lot of good information about keeping costs down on Recording Revolution. That's probably the most budget conscious one.
Yeah. No, I love that channel as well too. That was definitely when I was learning how to do this stuff. I was like talking to you mostly because you knew this stuff already, and you're like, yeah, those two channels, Produce Like a Pro and Recording Revolution. And that's the same thing with me, like where I learned kind of the ropes of stuff.
Just a wealth of knowledge, and it's all free, man. It's all free.
I like free.
You want to hit up a podcast?
Yes. So a podcast that I am particularly passionate about. This is not a music podcast. I don't even think there is an episode about music, but it's called Hardcore History.
Oh yeah, baby.
And it's by a guy named Dan Carlin. Is that right?
Dan Carlin.
And it's like a different type of podcast, not conversational. Like it's just him talking to a mic, telling a story. But I believe, not sure, it sounds like he's written these out almost like essays.
It's definitely scripted. Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like meticulous. Like it's a good, the way he like, you know, the order in which he tells things, the words he uses to describe things, it's like beautiful.
Very
You know what I mean?
post-produced, well edited,
Yeah.
everything's well put together. Yeah, it's incredibly good. Yeah.
I'm not really a history guy, like, which sounds really stupid to say, but like I've never like been particularly interested in just random history.
Mm-hmm.
But man, does he present it in a like interesting way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I'm not sure who turned me onto this, but the first and really only actually that's not true. I've listened to multiple series of his. The first series I listened to is called Blueprint for Armageddon.
Yeah,
I believe it's a 6-part series. If I'm
no,
not
2 hours each.
2 hours each, 6 parts, right?
Minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like
2
that.
hours each. So it's a long show. But boy, howdy, it's he recounts how the First World War started, the events leading up to it, and then you know the events that unfolded and the results of it, and just tells the whole story of it. It explains who the major players were and some of the major figures. And he goes into battle strategy. I think he's super fascinated with warfare and tactics and military stuff, and he just explains it so well. Tells the story in a very compelling way. His voice is super interesting to listen to, and it's just an incredible. Oh yeah, he gets so into it, and he does a little bit of character acting too when he's quoting what people have said, and just it's just marvelous. And I mean, I didn't know really. I mean, the stuff you learn in school about history, they don't get into the nitty gritty stuff. They don't tell you about what being in the trenches was really like, or what, you know what I mean?
Crazy stories. Yeah.
And so it was.
You go ahead.
Yeah,
I got a whole.
It was just like there was stuff I never ever heard before about the First World War, and it gripped me in a huge way. And I'm looking forward to the day. Maybe it's out already. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to the day when the World War II one's out, because I'm just like, I was absolutely fascinated. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
The thing that I really like about him is I think he spends like a year or more on each series.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
So for 6 2-hour podcasts, he spends the year. I think it's his only way that he makes money now.
Is that right?
Yeah, he's referencing like multiple books written about the subject. He'll read parts of personal letters or journal entries by just soldiers, or by, you know, like obviously like really famous people like what's his face, Winston Churchill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like it's just his perspectives on those. It's amazing. It's literally any of the stuff on here, entertainment wise, I'd say that this tops it for me. If I were for a person on the street to be like, listen to a podcast, it'd be like hardcore history, and maybe one other one here.
Yeah,
just honorable mention.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's great.
100%. All right, let's jump back to YouTube. We got a few more to go through here.
Yeah. What do you think? We've done Produce Like a Pro, we've done Recording Revolution. What's next on that list?
I think it's got to be Rick Beato.
Yeah, see, I haven't listened to him. I've seen his stuff. I saw the video of his kid. That was impressive.
With the perfect pitch.
Yeah, where it was kind of like a Facebook almost viral video.
Yeah.
And it was just, he was playing notes for his kid, and his kid kind of almost was just like staring blankly in the distance, and was just calling it out in a much better way than I.
Oh, it's bizarre. The most recent one there's several perfect pitch ones with his son. The most recent one I saw, he was playing like a 4-part chord, like a you know, diminished 7 chord or what have you, over another 4-part chord. You know, so it'd be like, you know, G major 7 over E sus or something, and it's like chords that just sound like absolute nonsense. Like somebody just played a bunch of random notes on the piano all at once, and his son's able to pick all these out.
He picks them out, and he understands them too, right?
Oh yeah, he knows theory, he knows all that stuff. It's just wild. So that's worth watching, whether you find recording interesting or not, or music interesting or not. It's just incredible to watch.
Does this channel hold up entertainment wise for like random people, or is it more like you're going there to learn something?
I think he's again got a great mix of everything. There's some hardcore music theory stuff there. So if you're really into playing, like if you're a great instrumentalist and you're looking for more stuff to sink your teeth into in terms of theory and harmony and compositional stuff, this is the place to go for that. I'm not sure what his credentials are, but I know he's maybe is or was a professor of some kind.
Really?
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding.
I mean,
of his stuff that I've only seen a bit, and it's great.
Yeah, it's really high level music theory stuff, but there's also a little bit of recording stuff. There's a great video, and I'll just pull up the title of it here. There's a great video called "How to Play a Pentatonic Scale," which sounds like the most basic thing ever in terms of a guitar player. But there's some great exercises in there, just sort of showing all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale, whereas most people just learn 1 or 2. There's actually 5, and it's an exercise to get through them all. I found that really helpful, and just practicing that stuff really helped my guitar playing a lot. So that was a great one. He's got lots of sort of guitar-y kind of videos. And then if you're...
Is he primarily a guitarist?
Yeah, he plays piano as well. But if you're into guitars in terms of gear, there's also some good stuff there as well. And he has a few different guitar players in his circle that he sits down with and chats about gear and also about playing and different techniques and stuff like that. So if you're really into guitar playing, it's a good one. And then if you're just into music, if you're a music fan, he's got a really excellent series, and it's called "What Makes This Song Great."
That would be interesting to someone who doesn't. It sounds like, at least, would be interesting to someone who is not like looking to, learn a scale or recording or.
If you're just a music listener and you really love it. Like he's got the isolated tracks, he breaks it down, and shows you what's going on, and explains sort of why different compositional choices or lyric choices are what makes the song great. But if you're a little bit more advanced, if you're a little bit more in the know about music, he does get into some theoretical stuff as well. He transcribes riffs and rhythms and lyrics and other things from the recordings and puts them on the screen, says this is what they're doing here, they're playing this note over this chord, and because they're doing that and then they lead into this thing, it creates this tension or what have you, right? Or it's thematic or whatever. So it gets, again, really on the compositional side, but he'll also get into technical stuff like who the engineer was, how they recorded it. It's really fascinating stuff. It's a great thing to just sort of, even just to have on if you're doing housework or working on something else.
That's
just,
where I
listen.
Just
have it
on
in the background, just to be like, oh man, they did this, or I never noticed that chord was actually that. Or sometimes they even pick up a guitar and be like, here's how you play this. A lot of people play this wrong, but this is how it actually is. And so it's worth a watch for sure, man. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah. See, I haven't checked it out, and I think it's because I'm like a guitarist, and by the time, like, obviously I haven't officially learned guitar, but the time that I would have needed this stuff, that's not true. If I had more time, I'd be checking this stuff out. You know what I mean?
Hey, you ain't got nothing but time right now.
That's exactly it. It's true. Yeah, like when we were learning instruments, I think it was just the beginning of like when the internet was starting to do this.
Sure.
I had a website that I went on.
It didn't coincide with our developmental sort of.
No,
yeah, I understand that, but I mean, for me, like being a little bit sort of behind everybody else in terms of playing guitar, I found some great stuff.
He's got some good stuff. I need to check him out.
You should, man.
The long answer is I need to check him out because there's plenty of stuff where I'm like, I need to brush up on this.
All right, let's hit a couple more real quick.
Yeah.
Let me talk quickly about this last podcast here on the list. This is the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. It's a long name. CD Baby is a music distribution company. So if you're going to listen to it, go in knowing that, of course, they are a service that distributes music and they want your business. So, but all that being said, I think it's a really well-rounded podcast. There's a lot of great free information. Of course, they're going to say, well, you should use C Baby to do this. But,
Of course.
It's a free podcast. They're allowed to advertise their own services. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
it's expected.
Yeah. So this is a great podcast for folks who are independent artists and songwriters and are trying to get their music out there. They talk a lot about maximizing different things like social media, saving as much money as you can. They explain the ins and outs of different sort of rules and laws and stuff in terms of releasing your music. There's a wealth of knowledge on there. They're well into 200 something episodes. The episodes are pretty short. They're nice and digestible. They take listener questions. And if you're really into it, they actually have gatherings. Probably not right now, but they have these get-togethers where like a bunch of people can come and they do a live show and all the rest of that stuff. So a couple of episodes just to highlight. I found these both super helpful. Number 216, marketing music with Instagram and Instagram stories. As a guy who doesn't really know how Instagram works, there was a lot of stuff in there that I was like, oh, you could do that? Oh, that's how people are doing that. Oh, that's what, okay. And then okay, cool. So definitely worth checking out if you're an independent artist, because pretty much all of us are promoting on Instagram as our number one way to reach people at this point. So that would be a good one to check out. Again, not that long of an episode. Another one that was great, 236, the 7 most important things to know about distribution. If you're distributing music on your own and trying to choose a distributor such as CD Baby, TuneCore, 1RPM, the list goes on. There's a lot of sort of fine print and confusing stuff about distributing music and what you need to worry about, what you don't need to worry about. So it's a great episode to sort of get your footing in that whole side of the industry.
I haven't
because
checked this one out.
Well, I mean,
I haven't.
You're not an independent artist, so it makes sense.
I know. I feel like I should have a hand in it. So I always voice these strong opinions, like, artists are wasting their money on this. I can't believe he's doing that. It's like, but Mike, you never released it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's at the very least turn those artists onto this podcast. But yeah, it's worth a listen, man. Like, I there's some good stuff in there. A lot of good stuff in there. And again, it's all free. It's all free.
Yes, that's the beauty of all these things. There's so much free stuff, like spend 20 grand a year to go to a certain recording institution, and you could just learn the stuff online. One thing before we move back to YouTube's, I guess we should get the honorable mentions out of the way.
Yeah, sure. Let's. Yeah, we are running a little long here. Hit me.
Okay, so these 3 are my suggestions, and the biggest one that I was talking about this. If I met someone on the street and I had to suggest one podcast to them that just got it and was like, they're a little bit off the cuff, but they're very organized too. They release every 3 weeks. They're part of a company that release podcasts. Like, that's what they do.
Okay.
So it's called Reply All.
Okay.
And they do like internet stuff. So, they did an episode where they got a call from what's it called when somebody tries to sell you something on a phone call?
A scam?
Yeah.
A telemarketer?
It was a scam caller, but what's the legit version of
telemarketer?
That? Telemarketer. They got a call from a telemarketer, and they do investigative journalism, but it's cool stuff. They found that telemarketer in India, interviewed them, found out about the company, found out it was a scam, got to the leader of that company, tried to get him to stop scamming, and they're recording all of this and documenting all of this.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Very cool. But yeah, so the one that I recommend, it's called Instagram Thief, and they do a thing called Super Tech Help, where they get a request from someone, like a bizarre request about the internet, something strange happening, and then they fix it. So this girl had her Instagram handle stolen.
Okay.
And the guy threatened. Uh, he like messaged her and he's like, "Don't do anything about this Instagram account. If you try to get it back, I have nudes. I'm gonna share them." And so she talks to the guy from Reply All, and they investigate it. They find the guy. It's crazy. You got to
Nice.
check it out. It's
Okay.
the best podcast I've ever heard. Reply All,
Reply
Instagram
All.
feed.
Okay, excellent.
And then I'm only going to mention actually one more. We are running a long time. This is also a really good one. Just entertainment, nothing to do with music. Called Behind the Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about bad people. And so the reason why I know a lot about Alex Jones is there is a Behind the Bastard on Alex Jones.
Oh, really? He's a
And
very
what is-
polarizing figure, eh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
When he started, not a bad person.
Yeah.
As he gets along, it becomes very clear that he's trying to stir up stuff so he can make money, and they go through how he's making money and like all that scandal with the kids from Sandy Hook and how he
Okay.
kind of knew what's going on and like kind of gave the location of the parents of the kids who had died. You know what I mean? Like he's a legit bad guy now.
Okay.
I don't think Joe Rogan knows that though, knows the deets on this. But the best episode for Behind the Bastards, like because we all know him, is the Steven Seagal episode. He has 2 episodes on. Normally, he only has 1. Like I'd say 80%. There's only 1 episode. Steven Seagal is like a wholesale shit person. like you wouldn't even imagine what they get into. Fucking human trafficking.
Whoa.
He paid like a llama to make him a llama, essentially, like not the Dalai Lama, but like he's on that same plane.
Oh,
now.
I
He
understand.
bribed
Yeah. I
his
thought you
way
meant like
into
a llama as in the animal.
No,
Okay.
no, I have a llama sweater on. Actually, right now.
There you go.
But he's a horrible person, and obviously the human trafficking thing isn't funny. But just to know the extent of how bad certain people are, in history, and it's very interesting, and some of it is funny. Like plenty of the Steven Seagal stuff is funny, and then it gets down to the nitty gritty. It's like this Hollywood actor who's heavy set and gross is a monster. You know what I mean? So it's a very, very interesting show, and
Wow.
the host is hilarious. Anyways, that's all I gotta say. Those are honorable mentions.
I'll hit
very
up one
entertaining.
honorable mention. That's the I'd Hit That podcast.
Oh,
This is
yes.
a
I
fella that
really wanted to talk about that.
interviews very famous drummers most of the time, but other
Yeah.
side guy musicians as well. This one's geared towards the side guy musicians. So
Yes.
like what Mike and I do a lot of the time, just playing guitar or other instruments for artists on tour or on festivals or at club gigs or what have you. So this podcast is mostly focused on drums, obviously, but really great insights, really great stories. If you're a music fan, there's definitely some stuff in there for you as well. But
Yeah.
I think it's really more geared to people who are players themselves. But yeah, one of my favorites was the Aaron Sterling episode. There's actually 2, and they're both excellent. Aaron Sterling plays drums for John Mayer, among a ton of other
Never heard of him.
great artists, and he's a great studio drummer as well.
Yeah.
And I talked in a previous episode about the whole red light, green light, yellow light sort of
You did,
situation when
yeah,
you're
yeah.
learning songs, and I got that purely from Aaron Sterling and listening to that podcast. And go back and check out our previous episodes if you want to hear more about that.
Yeah.
I think it was called. I think the episode of ours was called "Learning Songs Quickly," if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yes.
Or
It was something about
preparation
getting. Maybe
for
it's prepping for gigs.
prepping for gigs. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Prepping for gigs.
Yeah.
Another great one was Eddie Bayers. He's a session drummer in Nashville. He's played on hundreds of hit records, and I was actually fortunate enough to sort of just be sitting in the control room just purely as a fly on the wall for a session that he was playing on, and it was actually incredible.
Really?
But yeah,
That's
hearing
cool.
the interview with him and just how he approaches a song and all that kind of stuff, it's just absolutely fascinating for producers as well as players to check that stuff out. So the I'd Hit That podcast.
Yep.
You want to hit up one more YouTube, and then we'll do some honorable mentions?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like the YouTube that you should probably hit it up because it's closer to home. which one are you thinking of hitting up?
Well, I was thinking you were going to do JHS.
We could do we could
JHS.
do JHS.
You're a big fan.
And mention
We'll
the other
honor,
one as an honorable
mention the other one. Yeah. Go ahead.
JHS is, once again, if you are a non-player or just lightly into playing, don't really care a lot about it, still a really cool channel. JHS is a pedal manufacturer. This guy is so passionate about gear. So
Guitar pedals, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, guitar pedals. Good call.
Yeah.
And the thing that I'm more so interested in is the episodes where he goes through like the history of something, so like flangers, delays. He goes through when they were invented, why they were invented, the first recordings of it, the first pedals that came out. So that sort of stuff would be interesting to someone who doesn't really want to play those things. It's just like the episode that I'm referencing is the history of distortion. So that effect that guitar players put on. He talks about the first recording or the first like claimed recordings of it, the first guitar pedal that came out of it, like all of that stuff. It's very cool. And he like clearly takes his time on it. It's not just a rant, it's really well produced. And then he'll play those pedals in order from the first distortion pedal to the next one that really took off, the next one, it goes all the way up to nowadays. And he's not talking about his stuff, like that. Literally, I think I've heard him talk once about it after talking about like 60 or 70 pedals, He's mostly just talking about how great other pedals are. It's a great, great podcast.
Nice.
Sorry, it's a great YouTube. It's not even a podcast.
Yeah, YouTube, yeah.
JHS. History of Distortion. Great episode.
Yeah, I'll be for sure check that one out. I have not checked that channel out. And you said he also does like gear comparisons?
Yep. So he'll do modern stuff too. Like, so say for instance, if you were looking for a flanger pedal, he'll be like the best 5 flanger pedals you should check out. And he'll go through, like, none of them are his, you know? And he'll sometimes he'll be like, well, I have a pedal that tries to do a similar thing.
Yeah.
It's so cool, you know, and he'll play them all through the same amp, so you hear them all compared to each other. It's wicked. It's great.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, the JHS History of Distortion, definitely check that one out. Yeah. Honorable mention, the Ken Tamplin YouTube channel. He's a vocal coach, incredibly great range, just great voice. So if you're a singer and you're looking for a little bit of motivation, inspiration, technique stuff, just poking around, just want to learn something new, it's a great place to go. There's a ton of information there. One video that helped me a lot is just called Sing Without Tension, and we'll link to that in the show notes. And that's just one really short video. It's like 5 or 6 minutes. He just goes through a few basic exercises, and I remember just being frustrated one night with my voice, and I didn't feel like I was singing very well, and my throat felt all squishy and tight, and not squishy, squeezed and tight, and honestly just went on the internet. I was like, what am I doing wrong here? And I just stumbled upon this video, and it was like, oh, sweet. And it just happened to help me a lot. So I've been showing it to a lot of people. There's some great exercises in it.
It was enough to ease your mind.
Yeah, and just another. The nice thing about singing is that when you get too used to certain exercises, you start to develop habits that might not be great.
Sure.
So it's nice, just like a workout routine, it's nice to change up the exercises that you're doing. So even just sort of perusing YouTube and looking for, oh, well, here's a different exercise. Here's a different take on an exercise that I know how to do. Just keeping it different so that you don't get into that rut of like doing the same thing and developing those habits. So
you know what?
That's a great channel
really
to go to
that
for
you
that.
Said that though about the habit thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. I've been like, man, I used to be way better at these exercises, or like these used to be more like almost I'd feel better after these exercises. That's really good to know that you get used to them and you kind of.
I find that happens to me. You start cheating them or whatever. I mean, that's one thing that's been really fun, like doing the Music Monday stream is like when I'm taking requests, people throw songs at me I've never tried to play before. And it's like sometimes I blow it, but sometimes I do a pretty good job, and it's like, and my voice feels great on it, and it's just like, exposing yourself to new challenges instead of playing the songs you play all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a point where there's a point where you practice something enough, you get really good at it, but then there's sort of a point where your instrument isn't developing anymore. You're as good at that song as you're going to be, you know?
Yeah.
And by trying something new, you know, you come back to that old song and you've got a new perspective on it. So
you're saying that you shouldn't play Semi-Charmed anymore?
Played it last week. Hadn't played it in a while. It's a lot of lyrics in that one.
Yeah, that is a tough one.
Yeah. So I think that's going to do it for YouTube. Do you have any more honorable mentions to hit?
Not really. I mean, we got random, like, there's tons of stuff we could talk for days about.
Yeah, we could. We could.
That's
okay, well, this was fun, man. This was we should revisit this topic in the future.
I'd love to hear. It's always cool to hear like the group, the masses, what they like.
The hive mind.
You know?
Yes.
Yes, the hive.
Yeah.
If we were Zerg.
Yeah.
Then do you know what that reference is?
Absolutely, StarCraft and StarCraft 2.
Yes.
And Brood War.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, no, just to hear what you guys like listen to, because I've gotten all of these I've gotten from someone else. I wasn't just surfing around for a pod.
Yeah.
Usually there's like Reply All was one that I got from multiple people. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know what you guys are listening to and watching, and especially in the music and audio realm. So I'd love to.
Yeah.
Always looking to learn more stuff and expand my my skill set and knowledge base. So yeah, hit us up with some of your favorites, and maybe we'll shout them out next episode.
We might.
Who knows?
We might. Maybe I'll catch up to the Instagram with my videos.
There you go. Yeah.
We might have that.
Maybe. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. If you want to support our show, you can go to youtube.com/musicguypodcast. Give us a follow. You could leave us a positive review or a negative review on on iTunes. You can follow us on Instagram, instagram.com/musicguypodcast. You can find me at alromusic. You can find my Music Mondays stream at twitch.tv/alromusic.
That was doing pretty well, eh? I've seen some stuff. It's pretty darn good.
It's been pretty good. It's been fun at the very least. Yeah.
You get to see Al's pretty face. He plays some songs for you. He's got nice new glasses too.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Where can people find you?
Slick. I'm at Bruno the Meek for some reason on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's a great name, but long story.
So we'll see you guys next week with yet another episode of this fine internet radio program we call the Music Guy Podcast. See you then.